Don't check for me unless you got a check to get into the circle. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Raphael and I am here to review part 3 and the final part of the reunion to the Real Housewives who had to pay to get into the circle of Atlanta. Did anybody watch this part? We start the last part of the reunion right where we left off with Sheree calling Anthony, her and Drew's flip-flop assistant, on the phone. She's asking him, so Anthony, did you call Ralph gay? And I'm convinced that Anthony is either A, related to Sheree, or 2, has her genetics, because all of a sudden he couldn't remember his answer. He's like, did I call Ralph gay? Who's Ralph? Did I call him gay? I don't think I did. I mean, did I possibly call him gay? Maybe. Do I think he's gay? I don't think so. But what I will say is that Drew needed a storyline to get onto this season. And I'm like, where did that come from? And were you not just cool with Drew a second ago? Why are you switching up on her all of a sudden? Andy, he's already had enough. He's like, okay, that's enough of Anthony. Let's click end on the phone call. So he hung up on him. You know, Anthony was probably pissed at home because he probably paid for the good Wi-Fi, thinking that he was going to get a whole 30-minute segment at this reunion talking bad about Drew and trying to expose her. But no, he got like a 2-second segment and that was it. You know, he was probably at home like, wait a minute, what happened? What's going on with my connection? Sheree, can you hear me? Should I call back? Let me call Verizon. Maybe that's it. So then they moved on. Sheree and Drew, they started going back and forth on who's the cheapest. And honestly, I'm on Drew's side with this because Sheree, you have a long history of not paying people, allegedly, and owing a lot of people money, allegedly. So, I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. So then Drew, all of a sudden, she's like, well, Sheree, you know, I had a lot of people trying to cash at me, trying to sell me a sex tape of you. And I'm like, where did that come from? Sheree's like, oh, well, maybe you should receive it because I would love to see that. So then Drew's also fast with it, and I actually like their little banter that they had. She's like, well, maybe I'll accept it since you need the money, honey. So then Sheree, she throws it back at her, and she's like, go ahead, do it, accept it. You know that video is probably hot. Sheree, let me find out that you're trying to sell I'm having sex by Sheree sex tapes next after your clothing line. So then they start talking about Fatum and how she did a whole background check on Ralph and Drew, and if the cast thought that that was doing a little bit too much. They're like, yeah, we think that Fatum kind of took it a little bit overboard with that. Drew was just like, Sheree, how come you didn't say anything to your friend? Sheree's like, well, she's a grown woman. I'm not in charge of her actions. She could do whatever she wants. And yeah, that is true, Sheree, but you're also her friend. You could have said, okay, yeah, I'm her friend and I don't control her actions, but I don't condemn them either. I don't agree with what you're doing, Fatum. If I was you, I would pull it back a little bit. I was doing a little bit too much and it's a little bit too strange. But no, she was just like, no, I don't find anything wrong with anything she said. And I'm like, well, Sheree, I mean, Drew then tries to explain what Fatum found on her and Ralph, the aliases. And she's like, yeah, I don't get why she would try to use that as a weapon against us. There's a bunch of Ralphs in his family's name. There's a Ralph Sr., there's a Ralph Jr., there's a Ralph McChicken, there's a Ralph McDouble, there's a Ralph Jr. double cheeseburger, hold of french fries. So I don't get what's the point. Marlo tries to jump in and make light of the conversation and she's like, well, nice to meet you. I'm LaToya. And I'm like, look, LaToya, if I was you, I would just sit there and be quiet because Todd, he's waiting backstage and he's coming after you the second that he comes out. So then they move on. They continue talking about Fatum and this whole rumor of her bringing up if Ralph is gay. And, you know, Sheree actually made a valid point to a certain extent because she was like, well, how come we're not allowed to repeat something that the assistant said to us when you repeated what the assistant said to you, which is, oh, I'm a cheap person and I don't pay people. And yeah, that could be valid. But the fact is that Fatum and Sheree, you know, previous seasons and this whole season as well, you try to bring up the whole, oh, your husband is gay thing as if it's a negative thing. That's where you screwed up because if it could have been any other rumor, it would have been fair game. Like, okay, you said something that he repeated. I'm saying something that he repeated as well. And now we're even. That's that. But the fact that Fatum tried to pull that card like, oh, well, guess what? I have something on your husband and he's gay. So now what? Your whole marriage is going to crumble. So what? What if she already knew that? Again, allegedly. What if he was gay or bisexual or whatever? It is what it is. So I don't get why they were trying to, you know, throw it in her face like, oh, it's a bad thing. I don't get why Anthony was trying to put it out there like, oh, guess what? I exposed him. That's where they both screwed up. Anything else, it would have been fair game, but Andy then asked Sheree and Drew where do they both stand with each other because Sheree went to go visit her after Jamaica. Sheree's like, well, yeah, I went to go visit her because of her foot injury. I don't want anybody on this cast to be injured, but that's that. As of now, me and Drew, we're kind of just like whatever. Drew is just like, yeah, me and Sheree, we're kind of like just whatever. And if you wanted a good representation of what this whole reunion was, just look at what Andy was doing because Andy was just like, okay, we're going to go to lunch. We're going to go to lunch. We're going to cut for lunch. That's that. Everybody go eat lunch, whatever. God, this reunion is so boring. Why is it dragging so much? I can't stand this anymore. Huh? What do you mean? What do you mean? It's gonna be a 3-part reunion? For what? It could have been one. Oh, okay, whatever. I don't even care. You know what? It's fine. The Real Housewives of Potomac is coming back so soon, and I can't wait. Oh, it's gonna be so juicy. Let me tweet about it. Huh? Yeah, we're gonna continue filming in a second. Yeah. Gosh, oh my God, we have a couple more hours of this shit. I'm tired of doing this job. I can't stand this. You know what? Maybe I should call Nene. Maybe I should make amends with her. Nah, let me call Portia for next season. Oh yeah, she's gonna get the center peach. Like Andy was just so over it because even Drew and Sheree, as they were going at it right in front of him, he was just like, no, I'm unbothered. I can't be bothered with this. Let me keep texting and using my phone. And that was that. Like he was just so over it. The husbands come out next and they're all dressed really nicely. Andy, he goes around greeting all three of them and then he moves over to Ralph. He's like, so Ralph, I was thinking of getting a massage after this reunion. Do you know of any good place to get one? Obviously, Andy's poking fun at him getting a massage from his own assistant. Everybody starts laughing and you know Drew's probably sitting there like, that's such a good joke, Andy. That's such a good joke. Yeah, tell another one. So then Andy, he moves over to Ross. He's like, so Ross, how are you been? How's everything been with the parenting skills back at home with Sonya? He's like, everything is fine. Everything is good. You know, once me and Sonya communicated and I found out her issues that she had with me, with her first child, we understand each other. And like Sonya said earlier in the reunion, that they're in a better place now and they're going to try to aim for another child now that he understands everything a little bit better. Andy then asked him, why did you jump in the argument between Sonya and Kenya? And Ross is like, well, I just didn't like that everybody was ganging up on my wife and I wanted to put a stop to that. So then Andy's like, how did it feel seeing Kenya call you aggressive? And Ross is like, well, I mean, I get it. I understand it. Do I think that I was being aggressive? No. Kenya, she started backpedaling and she's like, well, no, it's not that I necessarily thought he was aggressive or that he was going to do anything at the table to any of the women. But I mean, I think that Ross is a nice guy. He's a sweetheart. He's this, that, and the third. And I kind of wish that Kenya would have stood in what she said in the first place because I said it in my review before that I could see it both ways. You know, a black man being called aggressive, it's kind of like, Kenya, what are you doing? But at the same time, I don't want to invalidate Kenya's feelings because if that's what she felt in the moment, then that's exactly what she felt like in the moment. And we can't tell Kenya, oh, you're not allowed to say that about Ross. You're not allowed to feel like that about Ross. You need to put his feelings over yours because Ross, he was wrong the second that he got out of his seat. I mean, I was with him on trying to de-escalate the whole fight between Kenya, Sheree, and his wife, Sonya. But the second that he got out of his chair, he lost all credibility because what is everybody else at the dinner table supposed to think? Like, okay, wait a minute. What's going on? He's getting out of his seat. What's happening? What's going on? What's happening? What's going on? Of course, it's going to raise some concern. But Kenya, she goes on to say that everything is fine between her, Sonya, and Ross. They're all okay. And it's all forgiven. It's all water underneath the bridge. So then Andy asks Ross, what did you think about the situation with your wife, Sonya, when she had on the vibrating panties and they kept buzzing away because of Ralph? He had the remote control and he kept pressing the button. Ross, he kind of poked fun of the situation and he was like, oh yeah, I didn't know that Ralph was in charge of the remote control until I watched the episode again. And everybody kind of just laughed at it. And I'm like, no, Ross, I get it that you and Ralph are friends, but that is still your wife at the end of the day. And Ralph, he knew what he was doing when he kept pressing the button, trying to get a reaction out of Sonya. Sonya was freaking out on the bus that we all remember. So again, there was no consent either because according to all the women, they all thought that their husbands was the one that was going to be pressing the button, not somebody else's husband. And on top of that, I was shocked that Drew, who was sitting right there listening to this, didn't speak up and say, oh yeah, I didn't agree with my husband's actions. I thought that was weird how he was trying to get a reaction out of somebody else's wife. And on top of that, I was shocked that Andy didn't ask Candy, what made you think that it was a smart idea to give everybody vibrating panties to wear to an inspirational Broadway play? Like, couldn't you wait for a different moment? But no, it was just kind of like all swept underneath the rug and we moved on to the next topic. I'm like, it's getting kind of weird, but okay. Then Andy asks LaToya, why do you have such bad things to say about Candy and Todd's relationship? Marlo, she goes on to say, well, I just feel like all men cheat, and that's why I said what I said about you, Todd, cheating behind Candy's back. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna give you something from the archive, and it's gonna be 50% off. I'm so sorry for ever assuming that you were cheating behind our back. Todd is just like, yeah, it's fine, whatever, apology accepted, it's okay, whatever, let's move on. And honestly, I feel bad for Marlo that she had this upbringing of thinking that all men cheat. I mean, yes, men are trash, but I mean, not all of them are cheaters. What do y'all think? Do y'all think that all men cheat or cheat in some aspect? I mean, I wouldn't say that, but it's just so sad that Marlo, that's the type of history that she's had with men, that she thinks that all of them cheat. I mean, it's so sad and heartbreaking, honestly, when she has that type of mentality. Andy then moves it back over to Sheree, and he's like, so Sheree, what did you mean when you said the streets are always talking about Todd and what he does behind Candy's back? Sheree, Sheree, I love you, but I can't keep defending you anymore. Sheree's just like, well, you know, I was just piggybacking off the conversation that me and Marlo, you know, just had, and that's all. And I'm like, Sheree, at this point, just switch seats with Kenya. Like, what are you doing as the first chair? Like, what's going on here? At this point, just move at the end of the couch and have Candy sit in the middle because you're just a disaster. Like, what's going on? So then Todd, he's just like, well, with this group, the streets are always talking, and I just take it with a grain of salt. People are always going to say whatever they want behind my back, and it is what it is. So then Andy, he's like, so Sheree, what exactly did you hear? Sheree's just like, nothing. Nothing. I'm sorry, Todd. Sheree, at this point, you're this close to having your peach sliced in half and not coming back next season. Like, what's going on here? So then they move over to the next subject, which is Todd and his relationship with Kayla and his money. So Andy's just like, so do you think it's hypocritical that Riley gets to live this lavish lifestyle with money and Candy gives her all this money, but Kayla, you make her work for it and you have to make her struggle? Todd, his excuse is, well, I was raised from the Bronx, so that's why. And I'm sitting here like, okay, 2 + 2 is not equaling 4, Todd. Like, what are you trying to say with that? Like, I understand that he said, oh, it's going to make her appreciate things. The struggle is going to make her appreciate things, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely not. I said it before and I'll say it again. If you're born into money, you might as well take advantage of it. Why go through the struggle? Life is already hard enough and you're willing to have your daughter go through the struggle just because what? You want her to appreciate things better? No. In this life, we're only given one chance. So why, even go through that? I don't understand it. You would think that, you would want to, break the cycle of living struggling or whatever, or going through hardships in life. But no, he's just like, no, I want her to do that so she could appreciate things more. No, absolutely not. If I'm born into money, I'm going to appreciate things from a different perspective. I'll appreciate things on a yacht somewhere in Italy, but no, he wants her to basically beg for $1, and I just don't agree with that. So then Andy, he talks to Candy about her new play that she has with Todd on Broadway, I believe. I think it's called The Piano Lesson, and Candy's just like,
well, I'm really excited about this new venture with Todd, and guess what? Samuel L. Jackson, he's in our new play, and I can't wait to see how it goes. I'm really looking forward to it, and guess what? The red carpet premiere is right before BravoCon, so I have a really big, exciting weekend ahead of me in New York.
And Andy's just like, oh, okay. So then he moves over to the next subject and he just slides into the next subject like it's nothing, like all nonchalant. And he's like, okay, so let's talk about Candy. Candy, you always said that, if you die. And I'm like, wait a minute. Can he say that? Can he say that just a little bit more nicer or reword it a little bit? He's like, yeah, Candy, so if you die, you say that you don't want Todd to remarry anybody. Candy's just like,
yeah, I don't want him to remarry anybody because I see my grandparents, and if one of them passed away, they remarried somebody else, and then the money goes to them, and they want to control the money, and I just don't want anybody that Todd marries to control my money, at all. So I want Todd to stay single. I mean, he could be with other people, but I just don't want him to marry anybody.
And I mean, I get it. She has a valid point with Todd. She doesn't want him to marry anybody because then that person is going to be in control of Candy's money as well. And, she doesn't want that to happen. Now, will Todd listen? I don't know. What do y'all think? Do y'all think that Todd would not marry anybody else? I mean, I don't know. I mean, knock on wood too, if the whole Candy situation, because the way Andy just worded that out loud like that, like, that was terrible. Even Todd had to knock on the couch, like, can we not put that out there in the atmosphere? But let's say something was to happen to Candy, right? And it was just Todd and her money. Yeah, Riley could kiss all those 100s goodbye because she will never see it again. I mean, I don't think so because, I don't know, the way he is with Kayla, I don't know. And then Mama Joyce, I don't know. It'll just be like a battle of money every single day with that family because Candy, she's the one that's in charge of the money. And you take her out of the equation, yeah, it's going to be a fight to the very last dollar between Mama Joyce, Todd, and Riley. So let's just hope that that never happens. Drew then brings up how she was hurt that Candy and Sonia were talking bad about her Drop It With Drew program and weren't really taking her serious. Candy's just like,
wait a minute, I never made fun of you or I was never shady to you. I don't know what you're talking about.
So then Drew's just like, well, you said that I was in the face of my own program and I didn't like that. And Candy's just like,
well, yeah, I didn't think that you were actually running this program. I just felt like you were just a face attached to this other program belonging to somebody else.
So then Drew's just like, yeah, besides you, I also felt some type of way that Sheree, you said that my body was like a bucket of biscuits. And Sheree, you are still effed up for saying that because you were body shaming this woman. Drew, she goes on to say that I was going through a lot medically and that's why my body was the way it was. But now I'm on the program and I'm trying to get it all together. Sheree, she's just like, well, I apologize for saying that your body was like a bucket of biscuits. And I'm like, Sheree, like, you know what? Fine. Okay, we'll take that. She apologized and that was that. Andy, he asked Ralph, what do you have to say about Sheree's comments towards you saying that you were gay, you were gay, you were gay? Ralph is just like, yeah, Sheree, I didn't like that. I didn't like that you kept repeating what Anthony kept saying. Sheree, again, she made a slight point by saying, well, I mean, if you're going to believe that I'm cheap and that I don't pay people, you also have to believe that this is what your assistant, Anthony, who you kept around, was also saying about you. I understand that. But again, Sheree, you have the history of running with this narrative of calling people gay every other time and always saying it like it's a negative thing. Sheree tells him that she's never said anything bad about him besides what Anthony said behind his back. Ralph is just like, are you sure about that? Sheree's like, yeah, I've never said anything bad about you. Ralph is just like, that's a lie, because when Drew threw that doggy bone at Fatum, you said that was my dildo, and I didn't appreciate you saying that. So then Sheree, again, caught up in her words, she was just like, oh yeah, I did say that. Well, I'm sorry about that. I'm like, come on now, Sheree, you can't come into this reunion. You can't come into every reunion like, blind by everything. Like, you always go into it thinking that you were squeaky clean, and that's just not the case. So then Drew, she gets pissed off, and she's like, yeah, that's really weird behavior. That's weirdo behavior. So then Sheree, she mumbles underneath her breath, and she's like, you're weird. So childish. And then she keeps bringing up Fatum over and over and over again. And she's like, oh, you're just mad because Fatum, you couldn't handle her. You couldn't do this. You couldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. As if she's her bodyguard. Like, okay, Fatum is not here to say anything. Fatum is probably at home sleeping. And you keep bringing her up every 5 seconds. So then Drew, she's like, well, you need to be worried about your Sheba. She's not done yet. And that right there, if I was Sheree, I would have just been like, oh, you know what, Andy? Let me excuse myself from the stage real quick. I'm going to go backstage and cry. But then she threw it back at her, and Sheree, she became an owl, because she was just like, oh, you want to make fun of Sheba Sheree, but you're not even in charge of drop it with who? Drop it with who? Drop it with who? Then the conversation turns over to Ralph and how he's been a bad husband to Drew. He goes on to give her this lovely speech, and he's like, baby, I really love you. I can't wait to make love to you tonight. Like, I really appreciate the ground that you walk on, and I'm so sorry for my actions, baby. I really am. And, if I was Drew, I'll be fake mad on that couch. Like, sure. Yeah, stop. No, I'm not falling for it this time. Yeah. You said you're going to do what with your tongue? You're gonna do that little thing I like? Stop. No, I'm not taking you back again. Because him in that white suit, he was looking good. So I would have just been like, okay, it's fine. You don't have to apologize. But then they continue talking about his book deal, right? And then it gets even worse, because Drew is trying to kind of sort of defend him and trying to clean up his image, but she just keeps digging the hole even deeper for him by allowing him to just do whatever he wants in this marriage. Because he goes on to say that, the whole book deal, the way it came about is that he actually signed the book deal before he even told Drew about this. And I'm like, wow, like, Ralph, like, trash. I'm telling you, trash. So then Ralph proceeds to explain why he's writing this book, and he says that there's 3 reasons why. He's like, the first one is sometimes the biological father, he passes away, so the son is just left there by themselves. 2, sometimes the biological father, they don't want a relationship with their child, and that's that. The third reason is
15 minutes later.
So then Candy, she interrupts the whole awkward silence, and she's like,
what did you write in the book?
And he could just not remember anything. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's a pretty big sign, Ralph, on why you shouldn't be writing this book in the first place. But okay, whatever. He goes on to say that he's going on this tour. I'm not sure if he was joking or not. He's like, yeah, me, Todd, and Ross, we thought about going on this tour with this book. Again, Drew, she's just sitting there like, wait a minute, what tour? Again, another thing that she's never heard of before. And then Todd, he kind of sneakily, jokingly, he was just like, oh yeah, our first book tour stop is going to be Tampa. Candy turned around like, don't make me get my red hair out. He was probably serious on the low. They play a montage of Candy and Marlo's friendship this entire season, and they love playing that flashback of Marlo at the beginning of the season when she was just like, Candy is a damn hoe. They have played it every single part of this entire reunion. So then Candy, she wants to make an apology to Michelle Obama for quoting when she said,
oh, well, I'm not Michelle Obama. If you go low, I'm going low with you.
Because Michelle Obama's original quote is, I believe is, if they go low, we go high. So, Candy goes on and she's like,
well, Michelle Obama, if you're watching this, I just want to say I'm so sorry. I can never live up to your greatness. I'm so sorry. But Marlo, she really took me there. So, I understand. But one day I'll be at your status.
And do y'all think that Michelle Obama, do y'all think that she watches this show? Like, can y'all picture her in bed with Barack Obama? Like, oh, baby, look, she just mentioned me right now. Like, if anything, I think that they should reboot the Real Housewives of DC and center it around Michelle Obama and her friends. Can you imagine that? That'd be pretty iconic. But then I believe Marlo, she goes on to say, again, with her sob, well, not a sob story, but, trying to kiss ass. And she's like, well, I do want to take back what I said about Candy, saying that she doesn't do anything for the community. Candy, you do a lot for the community, and I'm so sorry for ever saying that about you. You do so much, and, again, I'm very thankful for you as a person. And I'm like, yeah, we heard it all before, Marlo. Next. So then I believe the next question is to Sheree. They're like, Sheree, how come you expect Candy to be such a good friend to you, but you can never be the same friend to her? And yeah, Sheree, I love her and all. I think she's really funny, but she's a pretty shitty friend. I mean, she's been up Marlo's ass this entire season, but everybody else, she's a pretty terrible friend, especially Candy. She goes on to blame her, and she's like, well, Candy started it. Again, so childish. And then somehow Kim Zolciak, she gets brought into it. Candy's just like,
well, remember what you said about Kim and about me eating her box? You started it with that.
So then Sheree's just like, well, no, you started it, blah, blah, blah. We never got anything out of that, right? So then I believe Andy, he asked Todd, what do you think about Marlo's comment when she said that you're underneath Candy's tax bracket? And you just know that Todd was just sitting there like, okay, this is my moment to shine. He was practicing the entire night before in his hotel room because he was just like, well, I mean, honestly, everybody in this room is underneath Candy's tax bracket. So everybody started applauding. They were like, oh, ah. Even Andy was just like, oh. Marlo, of course. She was just like, except Andy, not underneath Andy's tax bracket. And I'm like, please, like, come on now. If anything, Andy was probably sitting there pressed and upset. He was probably like, okay, he said that everybody in this room is underneath her tax bracket. Okay, just wait till next season. You're not coming back. Neither is your wife. It probably pissed him off deep down inside. Andy asks LaToya if she feels bad about bringing Todd into her and Candy's arguments. Marlo's just like, yeah, I mean, I do feel bad. And Todd, honestly, if I could go back in time, I would just leave you out of the picture. And here was Marlo's biggest mistake, because as soon as she would have apologized to Todd, she would have called it a day and that was that. But no, she wanted to ask him a question. And she's like, Todd, can I ask you a quick question? What do you mean that when you said that I had to pay in order to enter this friend group? And Todd was just like, okay. Todd, all he heard in his head was, finish her. Todd became Tanya, and he was just like, with the peach in his hand. He was coming for the center peach for next season because he was like, okay, you want to know why I thought that you were trying to buy yourself in this group? Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. Okay, you ready? Okay, so Marlo, remember I used to work, behind the scenes as the producer or whatever, season 4 back in the day or whatever, before I met Candy and all. So I remember, when you were thirsty in your thirstier years, and I'm like, oh, the thirsty years, like, here we go. I thought he was just gonna give a nice little explanation, but no, he was coming for blood. So he was just like, Marlo, back in the day when you were thirsty, you were trying to buy your way into this group or whatever. You bought flights, you were so desperate, you were so thirsty and dehydrated. And I'm like, damn. Candy probably, took a couple classes with him prior to the reunion. Like, okay, if Marlo comes for you, you have to say this, this, and this. So then Todd, he continued, but Marlo, she stopped him and she's like, okay, wait a minute. I'm not going to argue with no man right now. No. You're coming at me being shady. I was just asking a question. And I'm like, Marlo, I mean, you should have never asked the question. And if I was Marlo, that was your perfect opportunity to bring back that mouth that you had the entire season. And the second that you saw that Todd was kind of being shady towards you and calling you desperate, dehydrated, and thirsty, that was your go time to be like, okay, fine. You want to call me all that? Fine. You know what? All of that is going right out the window. All these apologies are going right out the window. I'm going to call you broke, and saying that you have no money. Candy is your, sugar mama or whatever you want to call him or whatever, and say all of that about his businesses. But no, you just sat there quietly like a sitting duck. I'm like, he's being shady towards you. Now's your opportunity. But no, you chose to be quiet. But that's just me though. She's just like, I'm not arguing with a man. Todd, he continues on by saying that trip to Africa, you bought your flight, your rooms, your all of this or whatever. You wanted to be a part of this group so badly. And Marlo, she plays this whole dumb thing as if she doesn't know what he's talking about. And she's like, I did. I bought a flight. I guess I bought a flight. And it didn't make it any better that Andy, the host, and again, he's been the host from the very beginning. He's like, well, I mean, yeah, you did buy your flight. If I was Marlo, I would have been like, be quiet. He's talking to me, not you. Be quiet. But Andy, he's just like, yeah, I mean, you did buy your flight. You did buy your hotel room. I mean, what else can he say? And Marlo's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, it's whatever. I mean, I don't care. It's whatever. It's fine. Or whatever. So then Andy, he's like, so Marlo, you and Candy, you two are two different people or whatever. But, I mean, what do you mean that, certain doors won't open if, you and Candy were both together or something like that? Marlo goes on to say, well, I mean, if we were in Paris and we were shopping around, they wouldn't let Candy in certain doors. And I'm like, what? They wouldn't let Candy in what doors? Like, if I was Andy, I would have been like, you know what, fuck it. Like, let's just wrap this reunion. We could end it right now because obviously bitches are becoming delusional. And they need to go home and get some rest because what is she talking about? Candy wouldn't go through the same doors that Marlo would have? I mean, what do y'all think? Do y'all believe that? I mean, maybe fashion-wise, maybe that's what she's talking about, but I don't know because then she goes on to say that Candy, she could go through any door when it comes to music and Marlo wouldn't be able to do it. But Candy, she can't go in through the same doors as she can. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So then we move on from that, right? Because Marlo's obviously, she's drinking the same thing as Sheree's drinking, which is a big gallon of delusional. So then I believe Marlo, she goes on to this whole thing with Candy and she's like, Candy, I just really want to apologize for my behavior to you, blah, blah, blah. Same old story with Marlo. She throws a low blow at you and then she apologizes to you. And the thing that really pisses me off about Marlo is that she can't stand in what she said. She has to use that little baby voice that, oh, I'm so sorry for what I said. Please forgive me. Like, stop trying to make yourself look like the victim here when you're constantly going at everybody and throwing low blows. Same thing with Sheree. Sheree, I wish that she could also stand in what she said, but instead Sheree's always forgetting everything. So then Marlo's like, I'm going to prove to you with my actions, that I can be a better friend to you moving forward. AKA, for next season, I want to come back as a peach holder as well. So me and Candy could be amends and we could be best friends again. Candy is just like, And Marlo, she was like, Candy knows that I'm not a nasty person. Kenya, who has been silenced this entire reunion, the third part, she speaks up and she's like, Candy, do you know that Marlo's not a nasty person? The husbands leave and Andy wants to go around to each woman to give their final thoughts on the entire season. He starts off with Sonya. Sonya says she's going to be running around in circles. He goes over to Drew. Drew's like, yeah, I'm still going to be gaslit by my husband. And hopefully he comes out with 3 more books that I can't read. He goes over to Marlo. Marlo is just like, whoa, moving forward, I'm going to speak before I talk, before I say anything, because I know how strong the tongue is. And I'm like, Marlo, who are you fooling? Not me. Certainly not I. Like, do y'all really believe that Marlo is really gonna watch her mouth moving forward? I don't think so. The second that somebody even pisses her off or says anything about her shoes, she's gonna go off and she's gonna talk about your mom, your child, your husband, your everything. So Marlo, I don't buy it. She goes over to Candy. Candy's like,
well, I mean, the only thing that I'm going to take from this season is that, well, bitch, I'm worldwide.
And that was that. Kenya goes on to say that. Kenya says that she's going to be beautiful. Let's just say that. So then we move over to Sheree. Sheree's like, yeah, well, hopefully, in the future, I'm going to have a storyline with Martell. Hopefully, I could be on Love and Marriage Huntsville as well. And I'm going to have 2 shows underneath my belt. And that's that. So then Sheree's like, wait. So before everything wraps up, I have one big surprise for everybody. And I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on here? What's going on? Is Tyrone coming out? Is Martell coming out? But no, another disappointment comes out. Her She by Sheree clothes. No, I'm just kidding, Sheree. Sheree brings out this huge rack of clothes at her She by Sheree line, and I thought it was so cute. She gives a sweater to Andy. The sweater is cute. The bag is really nice too. The huge bag with the giant logo on it, that was cute. And she's like, okay, everybody, this is all, for everybody or whatever. But as soon as the cameras go down, I'm gonna have to charge you. Yeah, this isn't free. I'm only making it seem like it's free because of the cameras. The second that everybody was like, okay, cut, Sheree was like, okay, everybody, pull out your credit cards. This is not free. And that was that, and everybody said goodbye. They had a nice little toast, a nice little send-off, and that was that. That was the conclusion of the reunion to the Real Housewives of Atlanta. So now, just like tradition, just like for Potomac, Salt Lake City, and Beverly Hills, I have to give, Atlanta the who's gonna come back for next season, who should come back, and what should be happening moving forward. So let's start off with Sonya. Sonya, I do like her. Do I think she's corny and lame sometimes? Yeah, but so is Drew. And, Drew, she was extremely corny and extremely lame on her first season with LaToya. Or was that her name? Yeah, with LaToya. So, now her second season, she was pretty good. So I feel like Sonya, she should come back maybe as a friend of the show. Maybe not necessarily a peach holder, maybe as a friend. Drew, I wouldn't mind seeing her come back. I mean, I thought she was cool. She had her cute little moments here and there. And You know, she has her husband Ralph. As long as he doesn't gaslight her the entire season, I'm pretty okay with her coming back. Marlo, you know, I know Marlo, people do not want her to have a peach for next season, but I actually think I wouldn't mind seeing her have a peach for next season as long as she changes her narrative just a little bit. You know, maybe not just give us, you know, the hit below the belt Marlo 24/7. Maybe give us like a little softer side, just like Kenya. Kenya, we have known her to be like, you know, this person this entire season, this entire time from season 5 all the way up to recently. This season, she gave us a much more fun and softer side. So it'll be nice to see Marlo's softer and funner side as well. Sheree, there's no secret. I would love to have her back. I know people do not want her back because she's a liar. She's always stumbling all over her words. But I love Sheree. I think she is hilarious, and I think she's hilarious without trying. So I would love to see her back, and I hope that this isn't the last of her. I mean, I'm not sure if her and this whole Martell situation, if she's trying to grasp for a storyline for next season, but I would like to see it. So Kenya, of course, I would love to see her back, even though I feel like this season, I feel like she kind of, you know, checked out of the whole show. Like, okay, I'm just here for a paycheck. I'm not really here to really do much or whatever. I'm just here to look good, and that's that. But Kenya, I would still like to see her be a part of the show. Candy, I know people are always saying Candy is boring, Candy is this, Candy is that, Candy blah, blah, blah. She has already ran her course to the show. And yeah, it could all be true, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like if Candy was to leave this show or if they were to fire her, I don't know. I feel like something would be unbalanced. I don't know. Something would be missing. It wouldn't really feel like the Real Housewives of Atlanta anymore. I don't know. That's why I couldn't see her leaving the show. I like her. If anything, they should just demote her to a friend of the show or something or whatever. Now, the other conversation that people are having is they want Portia, they want Nene, they want Phaedra. And me, personally, I don't want to see any of them back. I love Nene. I think she's the queen of the Housewives. But it's just like, we all see how she was these last couple of seasons. She was not happy. She was miserable. She brought nothing but negative energy to the reunions, to the show. She didn't want to film with anybody anymore. She was just over it and she thought she was above everything. So I just don't see that happening anymore, honestly. I really don't, especially with the whole relationship that she has with Bravo and Andy. I don't see that ever happening. I mean, I could be wrong, but Portia, I love Portia. I think she is so funny, but I feel like people are just being nostalgic with this whole thing. Like, oh, they want everybody from the past to come back. And it's just like, they need to move forward. Just like the Real Housewives of New Jersey, how they kind of pigeonhole themselves with Teresa Giudice. I feel like they're doing the same thing on Atlanta with Nene and Portia and Phaedra. Like, the fans are not letting them go. And we can't move forward without them. So how is this show ever going to progress? Like, it's going to be the same cycle with Portia versus Kenya, Portia versus Marlo. It's going to be the same exact thing. Rinse and repeat with Portia. Like, as soon as she comes back, what is going to be the first thing that Marlo and Kenya do, or Marlo specifically? They're going to start questioning her about Simon. Actually, wait a minute. Maybe that is a good idea. But, you know, it's just going to be the same repeated thing. We already seen the thing between her and Kenya a million times. So what more can Portia really bring? Phaedra is not going to come back to the Housewives of Atlanta if Candy is there. Candy is going to eventually have to leave if Phaedra does come back. And, you know, people are just willing to forget everything that she did to Candy a couple of seasons ago. I feel like we need new, fresh blood. We need, like, new wives. Like, maybe 3 new wives for next season. And, like, a friend of the show. And no Moneta. You know, to freshen up the show, like something. I feel like they should have took, honestly, a whole break, of a whole other year, or maybe 2-year break from the Housewives of Atlanta to kind of like reboot it or whatever. Because I feel like, I don't know, they're kind of going in the same path as the Real Housewives of New York. And I don't want it to go down that path because Atlanta, you know, again, they're the standard. So it's just so sad to see it crumble and fall apart and have the audience actually call it boring. Like, at one point, this show was #1 on Bravo. Like, everybody would tune in every single Sunday to watch the Real Housewives of Atlanta. And look, like, it's just so sad. Like, it's just a complete 160 or 180, 360, 180, whatever. But it's a complete change now. But again, let me know what you all thought about this entire season and reunion down in the comments. And what would you want and who would you want to see moving forward in the future on this show? Or what should they do to revamp this whole show? And thank you to every single one of you who took time out of your day to watch my reviews every week. I really, really appreciate that. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the love, all the kind words, all the sweet words that everybody has left week after week after week. It's so overwhelming. It's so sweet. It's so nice. And it makes my day. And I appreciate all of that. So, you know, it's so bittersweet, like Fantasia, that Atlanta is really ending. Again, you could say that it's boring. It's lame. This reunion wasn't the best one. And I get it. You know, even a virtual reunion was much better than the actual in-person reunion this time around. But, you know, it's so nostalgic. You know, I think that I'll always have a heart for Atlanta and I'll always keep coming back like a toxic ex. But the Real Housewives of Potomac and Salt Lake City are around the corner, so be on the lookout for those reviews as well. But until then, everybody, again, thank you again for all the love every single week. I really, really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody. Oh.